glimpsing paradise. A bubbling fountain, laughing joyfully as it spills over mosaic tiles, is the first sound I hear in the gardens of the Alhambra. Water is the fundamental element of a medieval Andalusian estate, the umbilicus. It refreshes the air and soothes away surrounding noises. It brings life to the vast acres of foliage, flowing down staircases, trapped in flawless rectangular tanks, sprinkling from spouts. It acts as mirror, reflecting the light, the nearby architecture, and the landscape. It embodies impermanence. All other elements of a garden pivot around the central axis of water. And as the Mediterranean sun wheels slowly overhead, bouncing off these mirrored surfaces, the radiance brings the adjacent delicate stucco work to life in a chiaroscuro play. Exquisite architecture, lush vegetation, and water combine to form a single luxurious and sacred space, a symbiosis of nature and art. Paradise. The ancient Persian word for garden, Paradisum, encompassed this idea of otherworldly, mysterious cosmos. The entire Alhambra seems like a mirage, columns so slender that arches appear to float in air, carvings so intricate they dissolve heavy wood and stone into ephemeral lace, vaulted ceilings so honeycombed they disintegrate into the heavens. Every detail planned with extreme endeavor to produce an effortless sanctuary for the soul. Even the forest of decorations, curled palm leaves, pines, vines, and tendrils transport my emotions to a field of dreams where buried memories summon me into an out-of-body experience. I become the garden, at one with the more than human, in communion with the divine. And yet this grandeur of adornment isn't on an epic scale. There are no grand vistas, no ceremonial galleries, no imposing sculptures. Instead, the gardens and adjoining Alcazar maintain an intimate atmosphere, continuously speaking to one another. To modern eyes, the palace chambers might look sparse and monastic, devoid as they are of furnishings and the warmth of textiles. In the Middle Ages, these quarters would have been replete with resplendent rugs, ornate tapestries, gorgeous silk hangings, and sumptuous cushions. The residents of the Alhambra did not have specialized functions for their rooms, believing activity determined capacity. So edifices had generalized purposes but no specific basis, much like a stage. In fact, the Alhambra is theater, a setting in which neither garden nor structure are separate, but perpetually converse with one another. There are very few barriers between interior and exterior, so that the entirety elides a poetry of fluidity. The grounds are not merely decorative, but platforms upon which to walk, sit, listen, discuss, and meditate. The entire complex is a performance in many ways, a reminder to visitors and the inhabitants of what once was and could never be again. This reminder is made explicit in the calligraphy scrawled across multiple surfaces, which states that all earthly pleasures are temporal and that only the glory of God is everlasting. Inscriptions near ceilings exalt the Almighty, while poems above doors, upon pillars, along hallways, and under domes proclaim the elusiveness of understanding whatever scene confronts the beholder. Contemplate, the whole property sings, consider your mortality, pay heed to the absolute. In an age when poetry was a vehicle for political propaganda and Sufism popularized the romantic, the mystic, and the abstract, the Alhambra was designed for hypnotic reveries of the infinite. Proportionally arranged with elaborate geometry, its beauty lies in the hidden mathematics of ratios, the structural principles of irrational numbers, the spiritual significance of tessellations. My eye roves among the honeycomb mukarnas as they engage with contrasts to create a limitless heavenly kaleidoscope. I get lost in the repetition of columns as if I'm immersed in a plaster grove. I squat among the flower-filled grass to observe how the courtiers must have viewed this scenery as a multi-layered, riotous, variegated carpet. Of course, most of the Alhambra is a revision. Monarchs rebuilt according to their own aesthetics, religious leaders destroyed portions, and even well-meaning restorers have distorted its layout. Boxwood hedges, cypress walls, and spurting jets were not a feature of Arabian gardens, nor were minstrel balconies, colorless suites, and the golden mean part of the Nasrid building technique. Stolen tiles, ravaged facades, and improperly replaced features have made a pastiche of the original. Still, the intended vision of the Granada princes and viziers shines through, not in the ostentation of repainted mosaics and sweeping panoramas, but in the quieter details. I spy myrtle beds lining the reflecting pools, which would have once been sunken in so that only the fragrance of their blossoms reached the passer-by. Orange trees dotting various courtyards lend their perfume to the afternoon heat. In the distance, wild flowers and a jungle of foliage frame the blushing parapets. A vegetable garden carries on Iberian traditions of positioning side by side the useful and the ornamental. Despite the massive crowds, there are plenty of random nooks and crannies in which to marvel at how this expanse is a disorderly conglomeration of conflicting desires, a collage of othernesses. Perhaps it is this very patchwork of styles that attracts so many to the Alhambra. Even beyond the ideal of the Persian paradise, this compound's irregularities incite the imagination, rousing the dreamer in us, allowing us finally to perform ourselves into the mystery, losing and finding paths into our inner beings as we leave the world, until the garden is us. And above it all, the melody of water rehearses the music of the spheres.